Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to day 2 of Tech UK's first ever virtual digital ethics summit. My name is Sue Daly. I'm Associate Director for Technology and Innovation at Tech UK, and it's my pleasure to actually be your guide for today and for the second day of our summit. We've got a brilliant agenda and speakers to really follow up what was a wonderful day yesterday. A lot more to come today. So first of all, a bit of housekeeping. If you weren't with us here yesterday, welcome. It's great to have you. And for everybody else, welcome back. As you will know, the plenary sessions of the summit take place on this platform. And on this platform, you will see on the left-hand side is a menu where you can access the Q&A function, the chat function, as well as the agenda for the summit. You can also access the breakout tabs where you'll have links to the breakout sessions that will happen later on today. You will also find all the relevant links to how to join the different breakout sessions and to come back to this plenary session later in your information joining instructions that you were sent. For the breakout sessions later, they will be taking place on Microsoft Teams. During the breakout sessions, we would ask that all the delegates remain on mute with your cameras off, which would be great. But of course, please share your questions with the speakers over the plenary sessions and breakout sessions as we go, and we'll try and incorporate as many questions as we can during the day. Also, of course, and we had so much yesterday, please join the debate on Twitter at the hashtag digital ethics and use the Twitter handle at TechUK to share your views or just to share what you're hearing. And so we are in a plenary session right now, which we've got a wonderful kickoff in a minute with Professor Luciano Floridi, who's really going to set the scene for today, which we're really talking about how do we move forward in 2021. And it's going to be a fascinating conversation, I know, that's going to set the scene for all the breakout sessions that we have before we come back to a really fascinating plenary session at the end of the day that's really going to set us all up and send us away looking forward into what we need to get done next year. But before we kick off today, I just wanted to reflect on what we heard yesterday in the first day of the virtual digital ethics summit. And we had a great day with some brilliant presentations and keynote speakers from the digital minister, John Whittingdale, from the ICO, Elizabeth Denham, really reflecting on the year that we have had and the year that we've seen in digital ethics and technology overall. And what followed those keynotes, we had some great breakout sessions looking at some of the lessons that we need to learn from 2020, particularly in terms of data privacy, data governance, bias and systemic discrimination, and also issues around data quality and data sharing. And I just wanted to reflect on some of the points and common issues that came up from the discussion. It's hard to sum it all into one, so don't worry, I'm not going to try. But some of the common issues that came up for us is that 2020, really, we talked about learning the lessons of 2020 yesterday. And 2020 has been a year of course, increased digitization and innovation, but also of conversation. People have been talking more and perhaps expecting more innovation, more digital in their lives, as we have been living through, of course, the global pandemic. But at the same time, we've seen conversations increasingly around the dinner table, around algorithms, around AI, around transparency, around ethics. But that conversation is really focusing on another issue that came up yesterday about the importance of realizing the impact on people and the impact on people's lives of the decisions and the technologies that we're using. So it's not just about perhaps accountability in terms of organizations, it's looking at across the whole issue here. And the importance of leaving no one behind, that came up many times yesterday. And making sure we leave no one behind, raise the issue of whether we need more public debate and discussion, and the importance of perhaps looking at whether, as we continue that important conversation, whether we need to reframe this conversation, reflecting on what we've seen this year and how we get that right next year. And perhaps that's something we'll touch on today. We've seen in 2020 as well, we talked about across the sessions, understanding the problems, understanding the challenges, and also the fact that one of the themes that we saw yesterday was about we have seen a move forward. There is a drive to operationalizing ethics within organizations. And we talked about, particularly in my session, about putting principles into practice or putting principles into protocols that organizations can use. But one of the issues that still came up yesterday, I think, was around we heard operationalizing ethics at scale. And how do we do that? How do we get that right as one of the big challenges ahead? And how do we do that? We talked about solutions, technical solutions, and we heard from Microsoft's head of responsible AI, Natasha Crampton, talk about their role and their work, important work in this area. But we also talked about the role of ethics boards, the role of technical solutions, and the role of how the importance of supporting organizations, particularly SMEs, to get this right as well and to help them. And in many of the sessions, we talked about how getting this right can't just be at the board level. It can't just be within a silo of an organization. It has to happen across the board, and it has to take in all the ways that organizations are using data, using technology across all of their organizations. So we have to bring, again, everybody, not just within society, but everybody within organizations on this journey too. And we finished the day off with a fascinating panel on the democracy in the age of AI. And this was a fascinating panel, which I won't try and condense into a couple of minutes because there was so much in there. But we really talked about whether we have looked at and thought about the problem of increased information, of where people are getting their information from in this new normal, and some of the whether we understand the problem of disinformation, misinformation, deep fakes, and whether we can really now we understand the problem, what can we do to start disentangling some of these issues? We talked about issues around disentangling responsibility, disentangling the issue of is it content or is it the amplification of content? And a key issue that came out of that, of course, is that everyone has a role to play in restoring the value of trust, was mentioned yesterday. And in terms of solutions, again, we came back to there are technical solutions, powerful tools. We had Adobe talking about their work in that area, but also non-technical tools, the role of regulation, the role of education. The question being, do we need to regulate or educate? But also in terms of non-technical solutions, we talked about across the whole of the day, but particularly in that session, about the importance of values and how you instill the values that then drive us forward. And we focused on ending that session and ending the day yesterday really on an optimistic tone of looking into 2021. There was a general view that that is the year, and perhaps we'll come on to that today, where the heavy lifting begins. Whether we have now during, and to sum up the day yesterday, we were talking about the lessons learned of 2020. One of the issues that came out of the panel at the end of yesterday was if we have identified the problems and challenges and we know that everyone has a role to play, how do we then move forward? And that is really the topic of today. Today's sessions throughout the day is really looking ahead into 2021. How do we move forward? What do we need to take from this year? And how do we make a real difference? How do we really move forward in many of these areas, whether it's operationalizing ethics, digital ethics at scale, whether it's reframing the debate and the conversation, whether it's having that public debate and discussion which has started around the dinner tables. How do we again scale that up? And how do we really move forward together? And we are really thrilled at Tech UK to be bringing this really important discussion to you today. Of course, we cannot do that on our own. So thank you to all our sponsors, all our partners for today, for really helping us make this summit happen. We really could not do it without you. So thank you so much. And also thank you to all of our speakers throughout the day as well. So I hope that helps to kick us off in a little bit of a recap for those of you that weren't with us yesterday. But if you weren't, please do remember that after the summit is over, you can go back and watch any of the sessions from yesterday or today, which will all be available for you to watch later on. So with that in mind, I think we're going to now move on to our opening session of today, which is again going to really set the scene and help us talk about how do we perhaps move forward in 2021? What does need to be on the top of all of our to-do lists, all of our agendas, and what's on the minds of one of the leading thinkers and leading figures in the data ethics community that we are thrilled to have join us again this year, Professor Luciano Floridi, who is Professor of Philosophy and Ethics and of Information, the University of Oxford, and Director of the OII's Digital Ethics Lab. And Luciano is going to join me in a conversation, really. We set Luciano a task to come up with what we've called his to-do list for 2021. And what we're asking, what we hope to have in the conversation now is a discussion about, we will briefly look at, what we've learned from the past, what we have seen in terms of perhaps the year that is quickly coming to an end, but also since perhaps the first summit, the first conversation we had back in 2016, where Luciano joined us then. So perhaps we're going to look a little bit back into the past, look at perhaps some of the predictions that we made then and what we got right and wrong. We're going to then look at perhaps touch on some of the issues that we touched on yesterday before looking into the future and looking ahead to 2021 and beyond.